Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Birds. It's Adam Caplan and the great Andrew DiCecco. Andrew, good to see you again.
Adam, always good to be with you, my friend.
All right. So, first of all, before we get started, not only do you write for us at InsideTheBirds.com, and you do the Daily DiCecco, which we all love, right? You're also a 97.5 Fanatic, continuing the tradition. Jeff and I hosted a show for 2 years on the Fanatic. Joe DeCamera and I, before he went to WIP, 13 to 15. So, speaking of the Fanatic, let people know when they could hear you, or give them a ballpark idea.
Well, they can hear me today from 2 to 6. I'll be on Unfiltered with Bill Colarulo and Ricky Vitalico.
Nice.
And then it kind of varies from there. Then I
Gotcha.
have I'm every Tuesday and Friday I'm on with then Tuesday 4 to 6, every Friday from 2 to 6.
Nice, 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 nice. All right, so check Andrew out. So, Andrew, you and I and Jeff were at practices this week. And the first thing before we get into the depth of what we know, what we hear, and what we think is going to happen, where we stand and what this thing could look like over the next 3 weeks, what are your thoughts on going to these joint practices?
I love it because there's a palpable sense of intensity and urgency in the air. And I feel like you just get more accomplished because you're able to dictate whether you want to work on red zone, whether you want to work on other situational one-on-ones, and then the team drills in that controlled environment. I just think that teams get so much of a benefit out of those joint practices.
Yeah, in fact, talking to some of the coaches just coming off the field, like the Browns loved it because they don't. Flacco's not an athlete, at least not the guy he once was. He's got good mobility for a guy who's 40, but Dylan Gabriel's mobile, but he's not a runner like Hurts, and they like going against Hurts, who obviously they know him. This is their third during practice. They've gone against him before. They know the quarterback, but this is, as you mentioned, a great way to get another look. I think so. That was great. And then what I found interesting is if you compare Wednesday to Thursday, and today's Friday, so we're one day before the game, but it's interesting. Like Wednesday, and we knew Wednesday would be a heavier practice because you're 3 days away compared to 2 days away from practice. But what do you think of the way that Wednesdays and Thursdays practices were run comparatively to drills and all that stuff?
So Wednesday had the one-on-ones. It also had some special teams drills, and it was a heavy 11 on 11, which I love. But then you look at Thursday, and Thursday was exclusively 11 on 11 with a couple of special teams practices mixed in. No 7-on-7s, no one-on-ones. So it was fast-paced, it was brisk, and they got a lot accomplished. And that's something that I noticed, Adam, from all the Eagles practices that I attend, and it's been all of them this summer.
Yep.
Very efficient, very fast, and very little wasted time.
And I think it's an advantage for Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, to be the CEO where he doesn't call the plays. We know this about Tom Coughlin, and who's a Super Bowl winner of other CEO head coaches where they're not coaching one side of the football. Although, of course, Nick is an offensive guy, so he has a proclivity to the offense. But you'll see him go to station, not always on offense. I think that's one of the secret sauces of Sirianni's development as a coach, to be able to put fires out when they need to be, to observe his coaches, not only his players. It has actually worked well. We don't talk a lot about it, but I did notice it on Tuesday, Wednesday. And by the way, Kevin Stefanski is very similar. He hasn't always called the plays. Some years he does, some years he doesn't. So let's get started. Eagles offense versus the Browns defense. And the way they set it up is it's generally on two fields, although special teams might be on the third in terms of the kickers and punters. But typically what you see is, okay, Eagles offense versus Browns defense in one field, and field three, it's the exact opposite. So let's get to the Eagles. We're going to do an overview of the first 2 days. So Tanner McKee, you've now seen him. This is year 3. And obviously you get a little bit more a high speed thing, as you said, you talked about to set this thing up. What were your thoughts of McKee this week?
He processes so quickly, Adam. And when he's at the controls, the ball gets out of his hands quickly. He trusts his receivers, which you don't often see from younger quarterbacks that are working with an interchangeable group of cast of characters, I guess you could say. But he also throws the ball with such touch and accuracy. He throws a beautiful deep ball, and that's something that has really registered with me over the past couple of years, really. But I thought really the last couple of weeks in particular, Tanner McKee.
Yeah, the thing other than the mobility, which has come a long way in the really the last 2 seasons, 2 off seasons, is his touch on short area passes has really improved. It's not easy when you're 6'6" to take something off of it, and he's done a really good job at doing that. And I would add this with Hurts. Boy, his timing, I know people knock him because it's all tape-based, but I know from watching him up close this summer, being at a number of practices, particularly the last 2, In the red zone where it's tight, you got to make stick throws. He
Hmm.
made them. He was more willing to throw it in tight areas, and I thought that's an area of improvement for him. And then, of course, with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a former Brown, and Kyle McCord, and we don't get to see him because, quite frankly, it's about the ones and the twos in practice.
Yeah, but between the two, I think Dorian Thompson Robinson has started to come on after not making that much of a splash earlier in camp. Obviously, reps are limited for both he and Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord, and sometimes context is important in this situation where he went 1 for 5 in the interception, but he's also working with, a deep reserve offensive line and players that that he doesn't maybe often work with. But I think for DTR, he's starting to build some confidence. He throws a nice pass, and he's the more reps that he's getting, the more of a rhythm he's getting into. And I've noticed that the receivers that he's working with, they have confidence in him, and vice versa.
So let's move to running back. And you and I have chronicled Will Shipley since he was drafted. Everybody knows about the speed, and then you had AJ Dillon, who's clearly healthy, by the way. What do you think of these two guys as a combination, in particular? If Barkley couldn't play in the regular season, what are your thoughts on these two guys carrying the load?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Will Shipley has made gradual strides in terms of pass protection. In fact, on Wednesday, he had a nice rep against Jerome Baker, the linebacker. But he just has so much juice, Adam. He's electric after the catch. He's such a natural pass catcher, but he also has home run hitting ability. And in my opinion, in game, he's the ideal change of pace running back to Saquon Barkley, that change up runner. Whereas if the Eagles needed to lean on a player to handle volume, well, that would be AJ Dillon. He's proven it before. He can
Yep.
handle 18 to 20 carries in a game. And I think, and it's all relative. He's shown some decent wiggle when exploding through the hole, and he's caught the ball pretty well this summer. Now, the big question that we all had was how was he going to handle the rigors that come with a game and handle contact? And thus
Sure.
far, he's checking off those boxes.
One of the things surprised me. We're going to start with Shipley here before we move on to the receivers. You're right. He catches the ball, and we know he moves well. You and I saw that last summer. But the thing, you could be fast, but if you can't set up your blocks, well, he had one in Wednesday's practice. I'm looking at my notes here. So Hurts dropped it off. He caught it, but he waited. Okay, he waited to his offensive line got there and set him up, and he went upfield. I'm like, wow, that is really good for a young player. I'm very impressed by him. And then with Dillon, the thing that surprised me is he has this jump cut, and where I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's 245 to 247. Where did this come from?
Yeah, he's not supposed to do that.
No, he's not. He looks really good. To me, this is the best. Now, again, they have to perform if they're asked to, but this is the best combo they've had as backup running backs in a long time, and I'm pretty impressed. This looks good. It's been a little bit better than I anticipated. Let's get to receiver. You know what, Andrew? To start training camp, my thought was that I don't know about this backup group, but let's get to you first. What are your thoughts on these guys? Cooper, Wilson, NolanSmith, Marshall, Cooks, I know just started to come back. Morning, even Charles Jackson.
Yeah, so aside from the top three, Johnny Wilson got off to a slow start in training camp. He wasn't playing to his size, and he had some concentration drops. What I've noticed, Adam, over the past week, even before the preseason game, that he had 3 catches, 73 yards, and he was going up and using his size and his frame to shield defenders and high pointing the football. He was making catches in traffic a couple
Yeah.
practices previous to that game. And when you start to make plays like that, you start to stack the days, as they say, and build that confidence. And I believe that while it was a little bit slower for him to hit that stride as a receiver, we know what he can do as a blocker. But I do believe that when you're able to have those successive practices like that, you start to get into a rhythm. And then Anaya Smith, he's flashed in one-on-ones to me. He's had some interesting reps against Cooper DeJean, being able to
Hmm.
separate the top of his routes, use that short area quickness. But he hasn't done really anything in terms of team drills. He hasn't made splashy plays. In fact, he had a drop a couple weeks ago. That's the one play that I could think of. But
Mm.
the player here that has really caught my eye, and he caught my eye earlier in camp, is Darius Cooper, the undrafted wide receiver out of Tarleton State.
Mm.
He can play inside, he can play outside, good quickness, and the moment never seems to be too big for him. And I think it really speaks to the way that he's progressed. That no matter who the quarterback is, whether it's JalenHurts or Tanner McKee, they trust him to go and make the play and attack the football. And I think that there's something to be said for that.
He is major urgency is a scouting term. I mean, he tacks it as you said. Now, here's the book on. We were looking for this information. We finally got it from some scouting switches around the league. So this is interesting. So he and Max and Hook were both academic All-Americans last season. Hook at Toledo and Cooper at Tarleton State. He was actually going to probably head to a someone told me in a not a, sort of an athletic training career had he not played football. But the big reason why he was not drafted of the list that we're going to give you, he was a high school quarterback. They thought he would transition better to receiver than quarterback at Tarleton State. One of the coaches, I think, someone told me, suggested to him, "Hey man, I think you're probably better off moving to quarterbacks from quarterback to receiver." So he did that within the first year. Now, despite the numbers he put up late in his career, it didn't seem to matter. No All-Star game invite, no combine invite. He was on the Senior Bowl watch list leading up to senior season, but he wasn't invited. And the other problem is the level of competition over the years. Now, I know that they transitioned to D1 from D2 in 2020, but they were in a 4-year uh, like an evaluation, and then they just were eligible for playoffs in college football last season. So you got to add this all up. Now it makes sense, Andrew, because seeing this kid attack it as you talked about it, uh, Jeff and I were talking to Mike Quick about it this week. When you see a guy play like this, who's been, let's call it like it is, one of the best receivers in camp, not named Smith or Brown, you question like what are the teams missing on it? But now you get it because of the information we just gave you. There wasn't really a reason to draft the guy because you would have to in scouting, you'd have to stick your gazintas on the line, for lack of a better term. If you're gonna jump on the table to draft this guy even the seventh, that's a look. You would have to say he's a draftable guy, but no team thought he was draftable. And by the way, the Eagles to move this along here, they gave him 90,000 guaranteed. It's not like 250,000 guaranteed, which Gabe Hall got last year. So we got to put that in proper context.
Every camp has a receiver who is sort of a lower in the pecking order to start that emerges or has a big
Yeah.
summer, but they sometimes they're not able to correlate that into regular season success or staying power for that matter. Darius Cooper is different in my opinion because I see certain qualities that I believe will translate over: ability to attack the football, build on days. And what I mean by that is show improvement day to day. You don't see someone who gets stagnant
Yeah.
or who flashes for a week. He's been
Right.
very consistent. And there's something to be said for JalenHurts throwing him the football. There was a day where he threw him, he made a catch on a low pass. JalenHurts gives him a high five, acknowledging him. They know that he belongs, and Darius Cooper knows that he belongs. And I don't know if you noticed on Thursday, Adam, they had Darius Cooper on the first team kickoff, and he was obviously the first two kick returners were Will Shipley and AJ Dillon, but the next pair, Darius Cooper and Avery Williams. So they're trying to find ways to get him involved and maximize that value.
Yeah, I'm putting him on my like in first week of August in 2022. I remember saying on a show, flagship's making the team. I'm in. This kid's making it. There's no way that the thing is, other teams, they have like interns monitoring Twitter. The word got out on Darius Cooper, and they also get what are called news clips. So they know 31 other teams know that Cooper's a player. They're not cutting him. They're not going to waive him. You're not going to risk it. And on your point, and that which is really one of the best of all of this, he does it every game practice. Every practice he shows up because he knows he's an undrafted free agent. You're not a lock to make the team. So I give I think it's Cam Bradfield, the Southwest scout,
Mm-hmm.
who's responsible, and obviously Howie for signing him and however they did it. It's a big time job by them. All right, so receiver wise, I know Cooks, who was one of the stars of camp, just got back. He needed to be back. I noticed in Thursday, Terrace Marshall was not all the time, but a lot of times he was the backup X receiver for AJ Brown, which he had been before Brown got hurt. So that I thought that was pretty good that he's back and he needs to make up for lost time. Johnny Wilson, you know what's interesting? This is how much they love him as a blocker. They ran a set of 10 personnel, which is 4 receivers and 1 back, and they kept him in a block, which tells you his value in addition to his size. It's over 6'6" and everything that he brings to the table when he applies himself. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, one more guy before we move on. Tell us about Taylor Morin, the undrafted free agent. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think he has really good show area quickness and he has a compact build. So he's a little bit of a more sturdy build compared to, let's say, Britton Covey.
Yep.
They're similar in height, but I think Taylor Moore is able to kind of showcase some contact balance when he gets on the move. He catches the ball well. He tracks the football well. He's had some nice moments. He's caught 2 touchdowns in the open practice, and he's caught a couple from Dorian Thompson-Robinson as well. He's also a prolific punt returner. I don't know if that's talked about enough. He doesn't get the reps ahead of, let's say, an Ainias Smith or an Avery Williams, but because he has multi-purpose value, you can make a case for keeping him on the practice squad, because I do think that there's something there.
Let me ask you this question before, because I know you and the local beat reporters put together their Final 53. And I know it's hard to keep 7 receivers. That's not going to happen. But do you think there's a chance to keep 6?
I do think they keep 6.
Who would be your quick 6 right now?
Without me tipping my hand too much for these this 53 coming up, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, Ainias Smith, and Darius Cooper.
Can't disagree with that. See, Jeff made a good point. Like with guys like Terrace Marshall or vested veterans, you just work it out with the agent. Hey, listen, we got to keep these other guys on the roster because Wilson and Cooper are subject to waivers. If we cut them, we don't want them to get claimed. Would you be doing a wink-wink deal? Hey, stay in the area. We'll bring you up after 4 weeks. We'll on game day if we need you, but we want you on our practice squad. We don't want, you could always work that out. Now, the one though, if you see, I know Avery Williams has had some reps at receiver, but to me, I have not seen him stand out at all as a receiver.
And his reps at receiver, to your point, have been few and far between. He hasn't really factored in much. You don't always want to show everything in a public practice, but I mean, when the season's just a few weeks away and you still haven't seen much of it,
yep.
I'm not so sure that he would be on my 53 right now. I think they have something there in Ainias Smith as a returner, that 46-yarder. Michael Clay talked about how Ainias has developed in terms of foot quickness and racing to the football and getting vertical and reading his blocks, being a more patient player, in other words. That's how I interpreted it. And Ainias just has a lot more confidence this year compared to year 2. I think that they want to continue to see that development through.
Yeah, and he's healthy. He basically had a redshirt year. He just could never get over that 2 different foot issues. So let's get to tight end. I'm fascinated by this thing because Kylan Granson, watching him on Thursday, he's an F tight end. He means he's offset. He's just not big. He's under 6'2". He's just not big enough to play in line because you got to protect him. But he's got as much juice as Calcaterra has, but they're different the way that they move. And I know you've seen him on special teams. You're Mr. Special Teams evaluator. What are your thoughts on him on special teams?
Yeah, I can on all of that, all of those
I
details.
know.
And he's on the first team kick coverage and then also kick return. But I think what makes him a little bit more unique, or maybe would force the Eagles to maybe roster him, is that he's more in the mold of an H-back. He's talked about he's lined up in the backfield before. He's lined up out wide. There hasn't been a role that he hasn't fulfilled. And more importantly, I think that he can really help them on special teams as well. Now, the question that I have, I don't know if they need to keep 3. I don't know if you wouldn't. I'm not so sure if you're the Eagles, you would worry about. Well, I don't even know if Granson's a vested veteran.
He is. He's vested. Yes.
Right. So you could feasibly keep someone like Granson and/or Bryant and EJ Jenkins on the practice fire, and then elevate like they did last year to great success.
Yeah, Granson, his 1-year deal is worth $1.75 million. They fully guaranteed at signing $1 million of it. Not a ton of money, and with Harrison Bryant is just charting the Wednesday and Thursday's practice. Bryant was because Brian and Granson are typically they're so different in the way that they're used. Because Bryant could play the wide position where Granson can't. But Granson is so much more athletic than Harrison Bryant. Plus, you got the team's value for Granson. It's an interesting discussion. And then we don't talk about him, but Nick Muse is on the team. They only gave $25,000 to a guaranteed. And then your guy EJ Jenkins.
Yeah, he's in my opinion, he's their second best blocking tight end, and he has a role on special teams.
Yeah.
If you look at someone like Kylan Granson and Harrison Bryant, they would probably be available to be on the practice squad, whereas someone like EJ Jenkins, conceivably has developmental upside. He was a collegiate wide receiver and played for 3 different universities, including St. Francis. So wow. I think that he's still tapping into that potential. And you see his size at 6'6", 260 pounds, he can give you something a little bit different, especially as a blocker.
All right, speaking of blocking, let's get to the offensive line before we get to the defense. So everybody knows Brett Toth now is filling in for Landon Dickerson. And he would start week one if Landon is not ready. To me, I think it's crazy, but I get it. He's been here 7 years. There's a reason. He hasn't been here all the time, 7 years with the Cardinals. He's had a number of injuries, but Stout loves him. Guy's tough as nails. Great story development, filling out his body. What can you tell us about Brett Toth?
Yeah, I wrote a story on Brett Toth about what he was providing behind the scenes that a lot of folks aren't privy to. He takes a lot of pride in upholding the standard that was set to ensure that he's upholding that and bringing young players along the way. He highlighted Drew Kendall as someone who he noticed right away fit right into the culture in terms of professionalism, in terms of humility, knowing what he doesn't know and asking questions. And Brett has mastered the technique of Jeff Stoutland. He knows how things are supposed to look, and he knows his teammates. He knows those players. And so I think there's a lot of continuity when you plug somebody like that in, whether it's between Jordan Mailata and Cam Jurgens, or he's played all over the line. But in this case, I think there's a lot of comfortability there with him in the lineup.
And they would have, if he starts week one, they certainly would have the tallest offensive line in the National Football League. Brett Toth is over 6'6". It's insane. I mean, it's amazing the length that this team has. So yeah, Kennard, I know, has been cross-trained at left guard. Pryor's not had any. I haven't seen any. Have you seen any reps at left guard? I didn't see any.
Pryor, no. Kennard, since the Dickerson injury, the Eagles have been putting him at second team left guard.
Did you see Keegan backing up Toth this week at all?
Keegan did.
Okay.
I think he was actually right guard.
Oh, really? He wasn't at left?
Keegan, yeah. Normally he was a left guard. He was playing right guard, and that's where Kennard was playing left guard.
Interesting. Okay, boy, they're really cross training, and what we saw earlier this week, Cam Williams, number 73, get a little bit. I saw him on my notes here. He got a couple second team reps, but he's a major project. Colin Pierce, another major project. I'll say this: talking to the Browns, what they really like, you talk about different looks. They think this is the biggest offensive line that they would face, so they like that they get their defense gets to face an offensive line this big. They got to show they can get off blocks, and that's on your point that you made earlier to start the show. This is a different look that you, not in terms of strategy, just from a size quotient is pretty good. Other than that, I think Drew Kendall's been a nice story. Wasn't real sure about him because from a scouting standpoint, talking to people around the league, you worry about the size. That people didn't see him as a guard, but you know what? That Cincinnati game, he was terrific. Where's Drew Kendall right now in your thinking?
Watching him from day one to this point, where we've seen 15 days of training camp, I see the notable development in him. I see him becoming more technically refined, and that really is his hallmark. He's a technically sound player, not overly athletic, but he's highly intelligent. And you hear different linemen in various interviews speak highly of him. I had a chance to interview Drew Kendall earlier in camp. I wrote a story about him, about his development. I thought that was one of the Eagles' best day 3 picks, along with Smile Mondon Jr. And I think that he is right on track in terms of his development.
Before we move to defense, just a couple injury notes. No A.J. Brown this week. And then for Cleveland, these are big. Martin Emerson, their number 2 corner, out for the season. JOK out for the season. Jordan Hicks retired, although they were thinking that was going to happen. The Browns thought that all offseason he would. He retired. So, yeah, you're down. Look, this matters. Like when you look at key players who are not practicing. But, of course, when that happens, you give other players a chance to perform, which they did. All right, before we get to defense, let's hear a note from our friends from Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter makes sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, Andrew, let's get to the Browns offense versus the Eagles defense. But before we start, I want to ask you a question. You were at the 23. I'm pretty certain you were at the 2023 joint practice, correct? At least some of them?
Yes.
Cleveland? Seeing Myles Garrett up close is an experience. What are your thoughts about him this week?
he's a practice record. We know he's a game record, but he's also a practice record. And it seems like there were times where he had to let up almost, Adam, so that
Exactly.
let the Eagles get off some offensive plays. But there was a play that he had on Wednesday where he chased JalenHurts across the field from the backside, forced him out of bounds. There's another play where it was a screen pass to Devontae Smith. Devontae scoots up the left sideline. The play wasn't over because Myles Garrett was in hot pursuit and tracked him down from behind and tried to swipe the ball out. He's just all over the field, one of the best players at it, probably the best player at his position. And it's not often that you see Lane Johnson struggle or have any sort of fits. I saw that one-on-ones. You and I watched that.
Yeah.
He's just a remarkable talent, and I think sometimes that's taken for granted. But when you see him there and you see what he's able to do against some premier tackles, it's pretty incredible.
All right. So on Thursday's practice, we were standing in the end. So it was me, Jeff, and John Ritchie, former Eagle and Raider fullback, and there was this one rep where, if you're watching on YouTube, so I'm going to use my left hand to show you. He took a jab step left and went right past my Lotta. John and I looked at each other like, did he just do that? It's whatever the hell he is, 6'5" and 275. And by the way, so talk to some people with the Browns. Over the years, Myles, he sort of built his body up over the last 2 or 3 years, but now he looks like Mr. Olympia. But to be this bendy, this loose in the hips, and this explosive, and on your point about he's almost toying, nobody could stop him. He destroyed the Eagles 2 years ago here. He didn't in 23, or 22, but 2 years ago he did. And this was something else, man. When you get to see greatness, and the other great performances when Tom Brady was here with New England, when he was 28 for 28 and the ball never hit the ground, every pass was thrown with anticipation. This Myles Garrett performance was something else. Although to be honest with you, Andrew, watching Lane Johnson since 2023, some practices where you go, holy bleep, this is pretty special. But offensive linemen, it's because they're not trying to get upfield like Myles Garrett is. It's something like I'm in awe of the thing that I saw, and I just hope if you're the Browns, and I know there'll be some Browns fans listening, I wish they could get him more help on defense, because they brought in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, a former first rounder from Tampa, who's probably more of a third edge. Alex Wright, who they like, is in the fine of his rookie deal. Isaiah McGuire from Eagles, Drew Naquar and KJ Henry. So they just don't have enough talent to help him around there. But seeing him, man, was pretty darn special on Wednesday and Thursday. All right, let's get to it. Andrew, your thoughts. So the Browns offense versus the Eagles defense. So what I find comical when people say, okay, who won the first 2 days? I don't grade like that. I'll just tell you when I think it's dominant, I'll tell you. But what do you think about the Eagles defense these last 2 days?
So on Thursday, I focused exclusively on the Eagles defense. Okay. And I thought in terms of run defense, they were physical and they were attacking the line of scrimmage. There were some drops from the Browns. And I thought Joe Flacco later in practice had dialed up some nice throws. But this really emphasized what Sidney Brown can do when he's in his element. And what I mean by that is attacking like a heat-seeking missile at the line of scrimmage. There were a couple of times where he charged in there to pop Dylan Sampson, the rookie running back of the Cleveland Browns. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I thought, had probably the best practice of any Eagles defensive player. He had consecutive nice plays and run fits. He showed some awareness and athleticism to get to the sideline and cover up Sampson on a pass play that was rendered incomplete. He was all over the field. And Cooper DeJean had some nice moments as well, playing physical, throwing a shoulder in there to running back Jerome Ford and impeding his progress. Now, he did lose out to Jamari Thrash on one particular play where it was sort of an outside-inside route that Flacco put it right on his numbers, number 80, and DeJean lost on that. But Cooper also had an interception later in the session.
So Wednesday, their timing, Flacco, particularly Judy, look at my notes here. There's something, their timing was off, and there were a number of drops in Wednesday's practice. Then Thursday's practice, they had more success. Now, understand something. To add, another guy wasn't practicing was Quinson Judkins, their second-round running back, who will be the starter once he's reinstated to the roster. So you got Jerome Ford, who's a pretty good backup. Pierre Strong, you might remember him from the Patriots. You mentioned Dylan Sampson, who's more of a change-up, a smaller back, a fourth-rounder this year. So they're just not good enough at running back without Judkins, so that the Eagles had an advantage there. But the other thing is with the Browns, now for years they had one of the top 3 offensive lines, not anymore. Jack Conklin, who turns 32 soon, He's had a ton of injuries in his career. Dwan Jones is really playing out of position. He should be a right tackle, not a left tackle. He's enormous. He's about 6'8" plus.
He walked right past me this morning. I was like,
Huge.
wow, there he is, DeJuan Jones, and
Huge. I know.
live and in person. Yeah.
Yep. Joe Bitonio, who won't be a Hall of Famer. He's in what I call the almost Hall of Fame list, but he decided not to retire. He's going to play this season. Ethan Posick, coming from Seattle. Wyatt Teller's been a great story of development coming over from a trade with Buffalo, but they're not good enough to tackle spots. But I'll say this: the Eagles' edges, Andrew. See if you agree with me. I thought over Wednesday and Thursday, they kind of all flashed, and then we'll get to the front. But Ojulari on Wednesday, you see that length, man. Josh Uche, he could still get upfield. He's clearly ahead of Ojulari after the first 3 days of camp. It was Ojulari, now it's been Uche. But give me your thoughts. You said 15 practices. You've seen Ojulari and Uche, Patrick Johnson, Powell Ryland, Obo Okonkwo, another ex-Cleveland Brown. Give me your thoughts on those guys.
Yeah, so it's been a largely quiet camp for Azeez Ojulari. I went into it with the expectation that he was going to be the Eagles' most impactful free agent addition. I thought that was going to manifest early. It hasn't yet, but he's had moments. Josh Uche, though, is clearly the number 3 edge rusher right now, in my estimation, based on how they deploy him and based on production. He's getting into the backfield. He picked up a sack today. I believe it was on Joe Flacco. Might have been Dylan Gabriel, but I should say it was Thursday that it happened. But he gets into the backfield so quickly that sometimes you have to remind yourself this is the player who in 2022 had 11 and a half sacks. Obviously, the last 2 years hasn't done much of anything. He combined for 5 over that span. But then you look a little bit further down in the pecking order, and Ogbo Okoronkwo has had some nice moments. I thought the 2 joint practices against his former team, he had some first team reps. So did Ojulari, so did Uche. It seems like the Eagles are trying to better assess what they have in terms of their depth players, and all 3 of them had some first team reps Thursday. And I think Ogbo's had some nice moments. Well, he's sort of flying under the radar a little bit.
I know.
He's purely a pass rusher, and I think that he's had some moments in one-on-ones and also in team periods.
Yeah, Obo is his nickname, by the way. So the D lineman, I am blown away by Ojomo's first step quickness. To see, it's one thing to watch it like if you're at home on TV, but to see it on the field up close with 5 feet in front of me, he's another guy. Like the word that Jeff and I got from a scouting standpoint, too smart, thought he knew everything. Would he be coachable? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Once again, the scouting people around the National Football League, they got bad information. Like this kid was and we'll get to what your thoughts have been you've watched him now for 3 years. But Andrew, I look at this guy, I go, how the bleep are you going to let this guy drop the 7th round? Andrew, give me your thoughts for the last 3 years and what you've seen also over these 15 practices of this guy.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, and this doesn't even make sense because you could still you find talent that sort of disputes this, but maybe just because he was undersized.
Yeah.
But he has long arms. He's physical. He's quick. He uses leverage to his advantage. Landon Dickerson said that he's really awkward to block, and he's meant that in the nicest way possible because of his unique dimensions. And he's also powerful despite being about 290 to 295. In fact, I spoke to Joe Bitonio after practice and asked him about Moro Ojomo, and he was impressed with him. He said he went up against him a bunch, talked about how powerful he is and how smart he is. And so I think that is a common theme when you go back to what Landon Dickerson said about him, what Lane Johnson said about him, what Tyler Steen has said about him. This is a player who has been a disruptive force really over the last 2 summers, and there isn't a practice or a series that he's not making an impact one way or another.
Yeah, it's a great story of development. Kudos to Howie Roseman for drafting him, whoever their area scout is. It's probably Cam Bradfield because that's the Texas area, and just everyone who's involved in this draft pick. I mean, this guy, he's got. I mean, there's something here, but you nailed it with the size. That's going to be the issue once we get into the regular season is how he holds up physically. Because let's face it, I know Gabe Hall's done a good job. Now, thankfully the shoulder injury turned out to be very minor, but they just don't have any experience behind Ojomo, Davis, and Carter, and they need these guys to hold up because they don't have the depth now that Thomas Booker was traded. So we'll see how that shakes out. Let's get to the inside backer group quickly here. So you mentioned Trotter. You thought had a great practice, one of the great practices this week. We know Dean won't be back till sometime after the season starts, hopefully sooner rather than later. But that's a bad injury, patellar tendon. But give me your thoughts on Jihad Campbell, Trot Jr., and this Dallas Gant, by the way, and Smile Mondon. They got pretty good length. What are your thoughts on these guys?
And Lance Dixon too,
Yeah,
the
true.
rookie free agent from Toledo. Yeah, I think as a whole, and I don't think this is hyperbole, Adam, you'd be hard pressed to identify an Eagles linebacking core that is this well rounded, this equipped to be viable for the foreseeable future. They have a collection of players with unique skill sets. I talked about Trotter. He's the play recognition, the instincts, the reactive type of player. Campbell is the physical enforcer who can. He's sort of the new age NFL linebacker, and when it all comes together, and he's able to really tap into his coverage acumen, he's going to be him and Zach Bond together as a tandem. I think they're going to play off each other really well. He's also a solid blitzer. Then Smile Mondon Jr. He's undersized, but he plays bigger than his size. He's physical and he's rangy. He's made some really nice plays in coverage. And you talked about Dallas Gand and Lance Dixon and some of those other players that they're too deep right now. They might not even be able to. I mean, they're looking at the practice squad for some of them.
Yeah, in fact, I would say to add to your point, it's turned out to be better than I thought. Now I could see why the Eagles opted against, unless someone else got hurt, to sign another player. Because you still have Bond, now he's back. Trot Jr. Campbell's 3, Gannon's 4, Monon is 5, Dixon 6. So you have your 3 teams. So, and obviously, there's no reason Bond would play this week. But you're going to get a better look at Campbell and Trotter, most likely in this preseason game. Monon Jr., him walking by me on Thursday, he looks taller than 6'2 and 1/4, which is his official size from the combine, but I know he's thinner. This is good. Look, this is a good job of scouting. They found Gant, who looks like he's got a chance. And obviously they know that school because that's Sirianni's guy, Jason Candle's the head coach at Toledo, so he knows him. But Lance Dixon.
I like him, by the way.
Yeah.
He's had some really nice plays, really nice athletic plays in space, but also as a blitzer. He's had some plays where he's gotten through the line of scrimmage, gotten his hand up there, and even some sacks or some would-be sacks.
You know, it's funny. You got 2 linebackers from Toledo. Fancy that. Like, who would have believed that? Like, that's hard to believe. But you got Max and Hook, who we'll talk about the secondary as we speak here. So moving on, Andrew, lastly, you mentioned Sidney Brown and what he does for the defense. But the big issue is him for in coverage. That's where Drew Makuba comes in. But Makuba's behind because he missed over a week. Thankfully, the shoulder injury is minor. Brown's clearly ahead of him. We know, and when they go with a base defense, we know that DeJean is a safety next to Mitchell. Next to Blankenship.
Blankenship, yeah.
Right? When they go to nickel, it's Brown over Makuba. No, we got to give Makuba time here. We're not writing anything in stone. This one is clearly open. This is fluid, but Brown's clearly ahead of him. Where do you think this thing's going?
It's interesting because Sidney Brown has taken obviously the lion's share of the snaps opposite Reed Blankenship. Makuba's making up for lost time. He's he's mixing in with the first team. And I think, he's going to make his preseason debut on Saturday. Then you could start to build off of that. And I do expect after that game that you'll see him get a little bit more first team opportunities. Look, based on his skill set, the versatility, the ball skills, the football intellect, that's a tailor-made Vic Fangio safety.
Yep.
Yes, he has a smaller body type and he throws his body around and he's physical. So sometimes you may be worried about whether they can withstand the rigors of a full slate of games. But Sidney Brown, as a post player, is going to really have to he's going to have to showcase his coverage ability or his ability to play in space and process things in order to really cement his status as a starter, in my opinion. Otherwise, I could see him as a situationally based player because today, or I should say on Thursday, was a carbon copy the way the practice rolled out. That's where he shines, coming downhill, being a heat-seeking missile, being physical, and craving contact in the way that he does. But I think Makuba has the coverage acumen and the football intellect, that blend that should allow him to see the field sooner than later.
And remember, Makuba could play slot. When they played, if I recall correctly, I thought Solomon played a little bit of dime and Makuba was playing inside. So
yeah,
we know he can do that. And remember, when you're drafting the first 2 rounds, those are starter rounds. So if Makuba's ready, you're going to start. Whether it's week 1, 5, 9, couldn't tell you. We saw what happened when Cooper DeJean was behind. Vic is old school. You're not playing until he thinks you're
Right.
ready. So they're just not going to throw you in there until you're ready. But the development Thursday kind of surprised me. We know that it's not been a good go for Ringo in training camp, but Andrew, kind of outline what you saw from the rotation at corner opposite Mitchell. I was kind of like, what? Go ahead.
So on Thursday, it was Adoree Jackson who rolled out with the first team, and he was opposite Quinyon Mitchell. They had Cooper DeJean at nickel, of course. The second team was comprised of Keely Ringo, Jacorian Bennett. There was Eli Ricks who was working in as well. And the second, and Mac McWilliams too. Mac McWilliams for 3 practices in a row has been working on the outside.
That's
Vic
it.
Fangio doesn't offer hollow praise for the sake of doing so. He's offered a ringing endorsement of sorts to Mac McWilliams at multiple occasions.
And now I would also add, when I was watching them, I saw Bennett. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw Bennett come in first when he was rotating in before Ringo.
Yeah,
I think that's correct. I'm like, okay,
I think so.
Yeah, I don't make a lot out of one, and I know they have to. Someone's got to come out. Someone's got to lose some snaps to Bennett because they got to know about Bennett. They're on a fast track with him. This game tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, will give us some more answers. But Ringo, this is a height, weight, speed draft pick. He has to be better. Every once in a while, you go, wow, look, that length showed up. But Andrew, too often we've seen the last 2 years. There's a mental error. He's just not there. He makes a mistake. I just don't know what he could be. What can he be, Andrew, at this point?
So the first 2 corners with the second unit that I observed, Adam, was Keely Ringo and Mac McWilliams.
Okay.
And then I saw Jacorian Bennett work in and Eli Ricks work in. And then Jacorian Bennett got some first team reps later in Thursday's session.
Yep.
But for Keely Ringo, to your point, it hasn't come together just yet. This is 3 years now. He's been here, 2 years of working with Vic Fangio and Christian Parker, the great Eagles defensive backs coach. When I look at Ringo, it's never been about the athleticism. It's about what's between the ears and being able to be consistent and the technical aspect of the position, being fundamentally sound. He struggles to locate the football, and he also struggles in transition. But then there's other plays, like you said, where you see that the length and the physicality show up when he's making plays on the football. So you just need to see more consistency there with him. But I think the Eagles are still trying to see what they have in him and give him those opportunities because he does need reps. People don't remember or maybe aren't aware, but he's played 311 defensive snaps in his career. Eli Ricks has played 315. Eli Ricks has played more defensive snaps than Keely Ringo.
That gives you all you need to know there. And Eli Ricks, we don't talk about him enough. I'll tell you what, he's been a nice story that they haven't buried him this summer like they did last year. The staff clearly didn't like him last year because as soon as they got in there, they demoted him. He's worked his way back, way up, and it's good for him. We know he could play special teams where he could be a key guy. That's going to be another one, Andrew, especially Saturday, tomorrow. Before we get out of here, are there any players you're really looking forward to seeing? You know what? Like I have mine. I have like Darius Cooper, of course, again. I want to see Brett Toth. I assume Brett Toth will start. He needs the starters reps. Remember last year, the only starter on offense to play was Mekhi Becton because they wanted to make sure he could handle it. But, Montrell Johnson, by the way, Montrell Johnson got work Thursday. If they clear him to play, I'd like to see him. But give me a couple guys that you're looking forward to seeing, either side of the ball.
Well, aside from Darius Cooper and Brett Toth, I would say I want to see Montrell Johnson Jr., who flashed earlier in camp before he had the hamstring injury that sidelined him for a while. Then on the defensive side, I want to see safety Andre Sam. Andre Sam is making an impact on special teams. He flashed in the preseason game. He's feisty. He throws his body around, and I think that he's really starting to come on a little bit. It's been quiet, but if you pay attention, he's been coming on a little bit. And then Eli Ricks, because I think Eli Ricks has had a consistent training camp, making plays in the football. You see the instincts there. He's had a more consistent camp than some other corners. So I want to see if he's able to kind of continue that momentum moving forward.
Oh, there you have it. The momentum will be in this game. Who's going to flash, who's going to come through, and who's not. This is a big game. This is the preseason game number 2 for the Eagles. And for Andrew DiCecco, I'm Adam Caplan. Thank you for watching Inside the Birds.